the thing about it is that you and I and a lot of people that we surround ourselves with have high standards and high expectations. And a lot of times along with that comes ego and being unwilling to accept that you are less capable than you were 10 years ago is a mindset, right?
How do you stay, and maybe you don't, maybe like, because I don't see as much as I would like that you do have pity parties, but it doesn't seem like you do. It seems like you're very pragmatic about it. It's like, okay, this is happening. All right, I got to pivot. I got to do these things. So I'll train this way. And instead, is that true? And if so, how do you stay optimistic when things don't go exactly like you wish that they would?
Well, well, I think, even though it was more on I would say a more amateur scale, all the competition stuff in the past obviously kind of set me up for being injured on a regular basis, aches and pains, as well as, herniated discs and knee irritation and hip irritation and stuff in my ankles and all that stuff. There was always, I think Rich Froning calls it the gremlin that's constantly like circling around his body. And I like that because it's true. There's always a gremlin, and I think over time you just learn to accommodate the gremlin. And you where normally, in the past I would probably push hard and just push through pain. Now, as an adult, 45-year-old man, I think obviously I know that doesn't work, and the time is the necessary component that really leads to healing.
Hmm.
So my timeline on this one normally probably in the past would have been like 4 to 6 weeks post stem cells and platelets,
Yeah.
but at this point I'm looking at 8 to 12 until I go back to line work at the fire department and real training. So it's tough, man. You try to do what you can do, try to have fun doing it, and kind of assess your body afterwards. Was it too much? Was it just right? Um, you know, Kind of like that whole thing where it's like when you're in acute stages of injury or healing, 2 out of 10 is kind of what you should expect for maximum pain. So if it exceeds that, that's where you kind of reassess for the next time you do whatever it is, back squat or a hike or whatever.
Tell me more about that. So, because I think that's something that I struggle with, and it sounds like you've thought a lot about that. Like, when is pain just a signal that, like, hey, you need to do something different, and when is and therefore, like, you can push through it and it's okay to feel discomfort, and when is it okay to give yourself
Yeah.
permission to, like, back off?
Yeah. I mean, Spencer, you know this stuff better than I do. I do feel like uh, the way that our bodies work, pain signals can be just as ingrained in our nervous system as uh, thoughts or movements. And
Hmm.
there is that confusion of, am I maybe turning this pain signal into more than it really is, and I should push through it? Or is this an unacceptable level of pain for what I'm doing? And
Mm-hmm.
I think again with repetition and maturity, I think the answer is pretty obvious for most people. But at the same time, if you've been dealing with a lifelong injury, people that I've work with have had injuries since high school football, and
Mm-hmm.
they say that they have pain in a knee or in their back. And I wonder, is it your body being efficient at sending pain signals quickly and
Hmm.
your brain's receiving that, telling you, sending the signals or thought patterns to trigger a cascade of events? And I don't know. Um, Kind of understanding the difference between the two has been helpful for me.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
That's I had written that down as something that I wanted to ask you about, because I feel like whether you realize it or not, like the way you've been very pragmatic about the things that you've had to experience, from the mountain bike stuff to, like you said, just wear and tear. It's been encouraging to me to be like, yeah, hey, this is just kind of a part of what you do, and to get better at understanding the signals. And I just think the world of you, and am excited to just have like a candid conversation. So I don't want this to sound like, I'm like interviewing you or interrogating you. But you've said a couple of times already that, you've had to do some things like an adult. And so as far as aging goes, I struggle with not telling myself that I'm old, but then having some indications that things are working differently. Like, I don't want to just like accept old age. And I see that all around me. People that are my exact same age, and they look old, and they've just,
Yeah.
it feels like they've just given up in some way. And I don't see you doing that, but yet there is this recognition. It's like, hey, the way that maybe I would have handled this 15 years ago is different. How are you dealing with that? Like, how are you gracefully accepting, like, hey, I'm 45 and that's different than 30, but at the same time not, for lack of a better term, like giving up?
Yeah. I'd say, the thing about it is that you and I and a lot of people that we surround ourselves with have high standards and high expectations. And a lot of times along with that comes ego and being unwilling to accept that you are less capable than you were 10 years ago is a mindset, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not I think it comes across sometimes to me as like admitting defeat. Like that's how it feels.
Yeah.
Um, but the way that I've kind of thought about it lately has been more in line with, okay, it's my turn to like set that aside and, for the guys I work with, help them with the struggles that I had at their age, and
Hmm.
like try to be a bit of a mentor to people when I can or if they want me to be. And it's pretty rare, because I work with a bunch of alphas that you know typically know everything, and frankly they are much smarter than I am. But when it comes to like health and longevity, like you see the same trends happening that like
Hmm.
you and I did, like just lift heavy and ignore pain and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and not really understand the full spectrum of what the longevity picture looks like, and also what it is you're trying to get out of whatever we're doing. And to me, that picture looks very different now. It's not to, like, for example, it's not to go down to the Rogue Invitational and put on a show. Yeah, that'd be cool. But the way I'm feeling right now, I'm going to be lucky to, you know, use prescribed weights. Like that's really in my head. Like it's not a big deal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a little shot to the ego to be amongst your peers and to unfortunately have to change things up a little bit. But to me, the thing that I would like to do that's more important is heal up for ski season and be ready to put some miles on my skis and experience some adventures, take some experiences, and bank them in the memories. That to me at this point makes a heck of a lot more sense than banging up my knees and my back doing one more back squat. It's just that's where I stand.
Man, amen to that. Man, you and I have had lots of conversations offline about, having high standards. And I went and got my blood work interpreted yesterday, and BPC 157's like changed my life. It's been such a great thing. But like looking at my total testosterone and free testosterone, it's fine. And this is the reason that I mentioned, because you said something that triggered this. But I have really high standards for myself. It's like I don't have low testosterone, but the expectations that I have for myself still to perform in the way that I want to feel is not just like okay or like middle of the road. It's a lot higher. And that's something that, man, kind of stopped me in my tracks, because it's like, from like a biological standpoint, hey, I'm still healthy. I'm still doing better than most people my age, but still the expectations that I have of my body to perform and to, like you said, not I don't really give a shit anymore like how the performance in the gym is, but like I very much care about going and being able to do stuff outside of the gym. And I think there's something with that. And then also like ego, like you said.
It's a scoreboard, dude. The fact that they give you an actual number for your total and free testosterone and your total cholesterol and all that stuff, it's a scoreboard. And unfortunately, you and I and a lot of other people out there, once you see a score on the board, you're like, I could do better. I could do better.
It's so funny that you said, because I was like, so it's like testosterone was like 500, and I was like, well, how is that? He's like, oh, it's okay. I mean, it's fine. And even just that, I was like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You just told me I'm just okay.
It's interesting though, I mean, like that's one of those things that like as you age, you kind of got to come to accept. And if it's not okay with you, have that secondary plan and know when to push the go button on it, and have those resources at hand, and do your research into who's the provider that you want to use and all that stuff. So like for example, the peptides, there's a certain time and a place to use those things. For me, BPC is like when you're in an acute pain and it's debilitating, and you need to just cut that edge off on a daily basis, because if you're just taking it every day, all of a sudden it loses its efficacy of pain reduction and making you feel better. So it's like Oxy, right? People get fucking hooked on that stuff because they use it every day. But when you don't use it for months at a time and you use it, it's very effective at what it's supposed to do. So I mean, testosterone is the same way, but I question, being a number, do we understand the full picture of what that number means? Like, for example, I used to think training more with resistance training should increase my testosterone. So I'm looking at in 2015, I got blood work back that I think I had a 389 for a total testosterone. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell? What am I doing wrong here? And it was overtraining. So I thought my body was taking that turn where it's no longer producing the same amount of testosterone, when in reality, I was pushing myself too hard, and I just needed to understand how to improve those results better. And it wasn't time to do any sort of supplementation or anything yet. It's just, again, how about this? Like, what was your free testosterone? Because you can have low total testosterone, but really what matters is that free. And if it's let's just say 27 or 28, you've got plenty of testosterone in your system to experience the benefits of high total testosterone. So it's just a number. But when you see a low number, you're kind of like, I suck. This sucks. I'm losing.
My life's basically over. Yeah. Man, from a training standpoint, I want to say out loud how much I love what you guys do. I follow it. Most people don't know that. I love how it's changed over the years, and is that I mean, I'm sure it's intentional, right? And how has your ideas around programming changed from when I first met you? Where, I mean, I remember some of the stuff that you were doing and we would do, and it feels like it's a lot different than it is right now. Is that true, or is it just it's just
Yeah.
my perception?
You know the answer to that. So yeah, I appreciate that, Spencer. It does mean a lot because obviously I'm just sitting in my living room on my laptop typing this stuff up based on what I want
Yeah.
to do. And,
Mm-hmm.
the program truly is written based on what I feel like at the moment is best for my body. And the reason is because if you have a large group of people, a good sample size, and they're all experiencing similar aches and pains or similar results, positive results in achieving goals, you kind of learn what to stick with and what to kind of forget about. And
Mm-hmm.
another big part of that is, staying in touch with our community of people that are following the program and making sure that they're enjoying it as much as I am, because compliance with the program, as you know, is more important than anything else. And if they're too beat up, or the program is too intense or too difficult for them that they can't do it 5 days a week, then it's not an effective program. So, again, thank you for saying that. I know that you've been always a supporter of us, and
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate it. I know Cherie really appreciates it. But really what it comes down to is playing with variables that I have been interested in for a year or more.
Hmm.
Fads come and go, and there's certainly the rush to jump on certain bandwagons, like for example the Zone 2 stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
something we've had a
Oh, it's
focus in.
hot. Yeah.
It is, right?
Uh-huh.
I feel like people do have no concept of how to implement a Zone 2 program in a multimodality high intensity program.
You're
Uh,
absolutely right.
and
how
and
how
that's
bad do
fine.
you want to punch somebody when they're like, "Yeah, I was doing zone 2." It's like, "No, no, you weren't, man. Like you weren't doing
Right,
anything."
right. Yeah, I mean, like,
You were just
there,
alive. You weren't exercising.
I know. So yeah, it's interesting, but like, I don't just say, okay, cool. So what's the framework of a Zone 2 program? What's that look like? Let's implement it next week. I go out in the gym, or the garage gym here, and I play with workouts, and I try to figure out, okay, what workouts or what movement patterns make sense to implement in a Zone 2 framework
Mm-hmm.
that don't necessarily keep your heart rate in a Zone 2 uh, for short durations of time. For example, I can row for 5 minutes and then do five 225-pound power cleans. And sure, I may not exceed a Zone 2 threshold, but I'm using fast twitch fibers and not slow twitch fibers. So that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make any sense to implement in there. So stuff like that, it's, I play with it, I figure it out, and then I push it out there onto the program platform, and I see how people do with it, and what they really truly think. I don't need them to understand why. I want them to just try it and see what they think about it and see if they experience a positive change. And the wonderful thing is I have a large group of people that are trying stuff that is new to them, and
Mm-hmm.
they're enjoying it, and they're seeing the benefits for, hiking, for running, for being more confident going out and doing things in the outdoors or at work. And that stuff it's like, to me, that's the pat on the back, is like, hey, good job. Somebody just says, these running workouts are starting to make me feel better on a daily basis. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm happy about.
Where do you want to take it? Like, because I think the last time we talked, you and Cherie said, like, "Hey, man, this is great where it's at. Like, we're having a ton of fun engaging with the people that we have." And like you said, brainwashed isn't the right word, but I think one of the most impressive things is that when you guys started this, it's changed a lot in terms of what you guys prioritize, and then what even the point of this exercise is for. So based on all the success you've had there, what do you want to do with this? Like, is there something, or are we content and satisfied? It's like, hey, let's keep experimenting and evolving what it is that training can look like. Or is there something else that you guys are excited about?
That's a great question. I I feel like I have kind of changed my mission for where Train for the Win is going as far as the program. Um, you know, our program is a bit of a revolving door of subscribers, and that's true of any program.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want out of what would satisfy me and fulfill me is that if somebody gives this program a shot for a full cycle and they enjoy that cycle, then they're likely going to stick with me for the next one and then the next one. So a long time ago, Eric O'Connor said to me that he had a conversation with a personal trainer in Park City where he asked the guy, "How do you get so many personal clients? Like you are knocking it out of the park. You always have 6 to 8 personal clients, and they stick with you forever. How do you do that without them leaving?" And the guy was like, "We set 6 to 8 week goals."
Hmm.
And he's like, some days, some cycles, it will be a back squat goal. Some cycles, it'll be a 5K run cycle, so on and so on. And that was probably, he told me that story probably in like 2017.
Yeah.
And it just took me a while to figure out how to implement it. And now that we've implemented something like that, I've found as a follower of the Train for the Win program that, holy crap, I really do love following a cycle with a short-term mesocycle based goal. And
Yeah. Agreed.
it doesn't need to, like, for example, we did a deadlift program for the first 3 months of the year. And I was happy to deadlift 500 pounds. It felt great. And at that point, I was done with it. I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
That's good. And I think everybody else feels the same way. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
cool, I just hit a deadlift goal that I didn't know I could hit that weight, and I did it, and it felt great, but let's move on.
Yeah. There's
So
lots of things. Go ahead.
my big thing is, like, I want this program to evolve. Honestly, this is going to sound a little bit egotistical, but with me, there's plenty of 45-year-old men out there that just don't know what to do because everything hurts them, or they don't have the same mobility, or they don't have the same skill level or capacity. And I would love those people to just join up with me, men, women, to join up with me and kind of experience the program with me and the benefits of it and all that stuff. That's kind of my goal.
That's awesome, man. I was talking to somebody and asked like how the gym has changed, and it was the same thing. It's like, well, selfishly, just as I continue to age and I go through different stages in life, like my perspective of training changes. And I think one of the coolest things is that, and something I'm always curious about is like how we get into groups in the first place. Like what gravitates someone towards Train for the Win, and then what makes them stick around. But regardless of those answers, I think it's really cool when there's a group that can evolve together, and dare I say myself, give them permission to say, hey, it's okay to not do this the same way that you did it before, or say like, hey, you need to care about deadlift all year long, or even say like, your identity is tied to how fast you can do thrusters and pull-ups.
Yep.
When are you going to have like a get-together? Didn't you guys do that a while back?
Yeah. We tried doing it, honestly, and we may have had the the plate a little too full for what the get together was. So yeah, it would be nice to do that. It's tough though, man, because like my recreation is my escape from work.
Yeah.
And it's like these guys that you hear, love, being a personal trainer. No, that's not a good one. Let's see. They like being a skier, and then they decide to go be a ski instructor, and now they hate skiing.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to confuse recreation with work. To me, getting out into the flat irons for an afternoon is absolute bliss, and
Hmm.
it's a chance for me and Cherie to kind of connect and get away from it all for a few hours and come back and feel recharged, sun in our eyes, all that stuff. So I don't know if we'll ever try to do it again, but if we do, I've seen some of the stuff that you've done where you just get a small group together and go out like friends and have a good time. But um, you know, I don't want to be somebody's entertainment. And
Yeah. That's a lot of
I would
pressure.
rather, it is, man. I would rather just go with a group of friends with no expectations. That to me, and I would have the pressure. I would be putting that pressure on myself to entertain people,
Totally.
and that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Well, I guess I forgot that the last time y'all did that, it was based on recreation. But I'm mainly just putting you on the spot to say, a 1 or 2 day gathering where these things that you figured out from a programming standpoint, just to have it purely based on education. And
Oh,
I honestly think there's like a really small, not massive, but there's a small wave of people. I'll put you in this category. I'll put some others in this category where you're respectfully and not in your face wanting to evolve this thing that we love so much in a way that does make sense maybe for a more seasoned athlete. But I think a different way to say it is like transitioning from just a fitness business to like a lifestyle business and
yeah.
a transformation business. And so, yeah, putting you on the spot, but if you did something like that, I would invite myself to come and participate. Not
Well, let's
not
do it
to
down in Dallas then.
Hey, cool. You heard it here first. Um, what are some other things I want to ask you about adventure, but before that, yeah, what are some other things you're excited about? You mentioned fire. First of all, did you get back into that because you missed it? Did you feel like it served a greater purpose outside of yourself? Because I'm sure, at the point that you got back into fire, like you could have pivoted and done a number of different things. And I've always been
Yeah,
curious why you got back into it.
um, well, the timeline kind of went like this. 2007, I got a job as a fireman, and I left that department in 2012
Hmm.
to compete at the 2012 CrossFit Games with everything I had. And I asked for a leave of absence, and it went up the chain, and ended up getting denied at the fire chief level. So um, it was a blessing in disguise because it made me realize, after chasing the CrossFit Games and doing that stuff for a number of years, and also training on the CrossFit seminar staff for a number of years, solely doing that.
Hmm.
It made me realize that maybe I found greater fulfillment in serving the public than I
Yeah.
initially had thought. And,
Yeah.
probably right around 2014, I started to kind of waver with my commitment to seminar staff, and I really started thinking about going back to firefighting. But it was such a insurmountable task because you have to get all these certifications again, and then you have to go through an academy and all of that, and it just seemed very difficult to take on. But a couple things happened with seminar staff that made the decision pretty easy, and I also wasn't giving the same effort that I was initially on the weekends, and that's what really kind of, I was thinking maybe I'm not uh, uh, being the best trainer I could be, and this is a signal to me that I need to go pursue what I was doing before. And since then, I've really, 2017, I got a job back with the same fire department, and basically was like a lateral or like a rehire, lateral hire. And I had to make some changes to the way I approach daily life in the station and also my mindset, because I did let stuff bug me. And it was because I was overworked at the time with CrossFit
Mm.
Verve, with the seminar staff, and with working for uh, um, the fire department itself. So it was just too much. So one of the things I had to like commit to was like saying no more often. And that's tough because, everybody likes um, they like attention. They like a pat on the back for a job well done and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But also like, I needed to come up with a strategy for being more fatigued, for being tired, for being older, for, all that stuff. So, you know, kind of taking it one step at a time. I will say that, yeah, the thrill of serving is a big thing for me, but man, I love working with those guys. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
I can
it's like when you
tell.
and I used to travel around in like 2008, 2009 with the seminar staff, and we just had a blast seeing each other every time we worked together, and we did stupid things at lunch, and we did stupid things after the seminars, and that is every day in the firehouse. And we get each other through some really, really tough times of fatigue, of, mental health stuff, and man, it feels so good to be surrounded by a group of guys with a like mindset of not only serving, but also just providing the best service possible to every person that we can. And
Yeah.
sometimes it really wears on you, but that's when
Mm.
like, my captain, John Cook, there's been times where he's had to kind of like, hey, get it together on a call and kind of wake you up, like give you the shake,
Yeah.
where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you're here to serve, wake up. And it's like, yep, yep. So, I love it. I love it to death. And, I'm trying to do, I'm not a great fireman. Uh, it's one of those things that I do try, and I do uh, put the reps in to get better at everything. And 15 years in, I'm still learning. But what I will say is that I have things to contribute to my fire department, and potentially to, the fire service itself, on how to improve things in the wellness and
Mm.
longevity arena. So that's what I'm really working on right now, on trying to get better at, trying to provide insight to our fire department, and hopefully, in the near future, on a bigger scale than that, hopefully.
That's awesome, man. As I hear you describe that transition, it seems like since you've been back, you've embraced the role of not just being one of the guys, but like actually being a leader and stepping out and taking all the things that you've learned, some in the time that you went away, but just that you're a constant learner of health and wellness. And it seems like that's been a transition as you've been back to not just be a good firefighter, but to make other people better. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Spencer, it's just like the exercise phys stuff, where it's like, there
Yeah.
are trends, there are things that you have to kind of uh, not poo-poo, but like, just like give it time,
Mm.
And I think with maturity, again, that's one of those things that, just like exercise, you have to do your laps on things first before you really buy into it, because the thing that's so appealing and makes so much sense, well, there's got to be a downside to it, and those things take reps to figure out. And just like anything else, too, the fire service is a slow moving bureaucratic train. So, like, you may have this great idea for something that you need to apply right now to our wellness of our firefighters, but it ain't going to happen for 2 years. So
Mm.
you can't get discouraged. You got to have that discipline to just keep chugging along, putting together data, and hopefully provide something of substance and value that, a group of chiefs that make decisions for the department can understand and value. So um, it's just like Train for the Win, man, where it's like, You
Hmm.
got to get slow buy-in and and
Yeah.
deal with a lot of rejection.
What is it that you're developing over there? Is there a certain program? Because I know you've talked about that some, but is there something specifically that you're working on and taking your time with because it is a slow process?
Yeah. Well, for a number of years now, since about 2018, I've been writing. We had a number of uh, in 2018 in the fire academy. We were a part of a consortium of fire departments that send a group of people to a singular place for a fire academy. And it's called North Area Fire Academy, and it's hosted at my fire department. So unfortunately, I think that year we had like 10 people in the academy, and of those 10, from our department alone, we had 4 hospitalizations due to rhabdo.
Holy
So
shit.
that right, and one of them was for almost a week. So, you know, that catches the eye of our command staff, and they're like, "Yo, we just spent $24,000 on workman's comp cases. What is happening in the PT at NAFA? What's happening?"
Uh
And
huh.
we took a deeper look at that and tried to figure out, okay, what's causing it. And as it turned out, it was, partially PT, and it was partially hydration, and it was partially being in bunker gear all day long. And we had to kind of make a big change. So instead of thinking of PT as a survival, uh, like a toughness, a mental toughness exercise, instead, we wanted to kind of change that paradigm to thinking about building these kids and older adults up throughout the 16 weeks and challenging
Wow.
them just incrementally. And, that program has changed a lot over the last 5 years now. And I feel like being up there for not only being on the cadre for 2 different academies, but also I'm up there right now on a light duty assignment. I get to observe on a daily basis that PT, and I get to see how these kids started, where they started, and where they progressed to at the end of the academy. Uh, what kind of side effects, whether it be aches and pains or injury or dehydration issues or all that stuff, how that plays in. So we've come up with what I think is a extremely good program, and it's a Train for the Win program. NAFA has
Cool.
bought that program now for and 3 years, and it's something that Sri and I now believe in. And we see the fitness assessment results from the pre-academy to the post-academy, and the numbers are outstanding. And it's something that I think she and I are now ready to put out there in the public, outside of the roughly 10 different fire departments that are using it right now. We're ready to put it out there for uh, being a resource for everyone else. So
Are
that's
you
one thing. And then the other thing is yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you telling me that resiliency could be progressed just like any other biological adaptation? Is that what you're sitting here telling me? That's nothing short of
I mean, dude,
amazing. That's amazing. Especially with programs like that or in the military where it's like, hey, from day one, it's just about beating the living shit out of you. And to hear you say, like, hey, there's actually another way to do it that's healthier and more sustainable, that's truly nothing short of amazing.
well, Spencer, let me tell you, this is what I observed in the first couple of years is that these guys would finish their academy and they would never want to do PT ever again
It
while
ruined
they're
them.
on duty. It ruined them. They're like, I survived the academy.
Yeah.
And now what I've seen is that with the slow introduction to intensity, the slow introduction to functional movements after building a foundation of, you know, joint strength, joint resiliency and durability, then they know they can handle these other movements that initially they looked at were like, oh my God, those just always made me sore.
Yeah.
So It is. It's gratifying, and it's cool to see, you know, roughly 50 people to 100 people per year go through this program
Yeah.
and come out on the other side a stronger, more resilient, more durable human being and firefighter. So,
Man,
um,
that's awesome.
yeah, and the cool part is too, you know, that if it works for the academy where we're holding people hostage and what they have to do, you can apply that to a firefighter program. So Sheree and I are writing your ebook right now that we're trying to do our due diligence and not just release something quickly,
Yeah.
and try to hit strike while the iron's hot. Instead, we're building this thing slowly. We are we have put it through the steps for a number of years now. We know what works in the academy, which means parts of it will work for line personnel. But then you have to take into consideration that, you know, being a line firefighter for so long now, I know what people feel like that are in a busy agency,
Mm-hmm.
that exercise is often the last thing they can or want to do. And how do you keep a firefighter healthy for a long period of time? Well, you got number one, if they're going to be on the job, they need a VO2 max of greater than 42. And that's really difficult to do as you age. So,
Mm.
what gets that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you achieve that? And, you know, we put a program together that is that fine balance that you experience in Train for the Winds programming, but also tax on a bit of uh, the enjoyment of doing the occasional bunker gear workout or team workout, you know, once a week or once every 2 weeks. So I really, really am excited
That's
for it to come
amazing.
out. And yeah, I'm definitely, we just took, you'll love this. We just took 5 days and we rented a cottage up in Chautauqua Park in Boulder, right in front of the Flatirons.
Cool.
And I locked myself into this little cottage for all hours of the day outside of one trip into the Flatirons for a hike or a scramble. And I just punched out 12 weeks of programming.
Wow.
So it was, yeah, it was tough, but now we just got to do all the videos, and I feel like it's going to be pretty great.
Oh man, I'm really excited, and it's cool just to hear all the different things you've experienced from, like you were saying earlier, that hey, how do you create buy-in? How do you encourage compliance? How do you over communicate what
Yeah.
the goals are in not, unending cycles, but like very finite periods that people can wrap their heads around, and you're applying this for something that has a really good cause. I've found that as I get older, I need something that no one can argue with is a good thing to pursue, and that feels like a really good use of my attention and my time. That's awesome.
Hey, everybody loves to walk around jacked, right? That's great. But as it turns out, you know, having large amounts of muscle tissue on your frame, although good for longevity, right? You know, you hear all these experts talk about how muscle mass is one of the things that equates to longevity as you become elderly. Well, having, you know, 10% body fat and weighing 230 pounds is maybe not what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, here's
Yeah.
the thing. Large amounts of muscle tissue does not equate to a high VO2 max.
Mm-hmm.
And they say the same thing about VO2 max, is that if you have a high VO2 max, that will equate to longevity. In my job, if you have large amounts of muscle tissue, you have to feed that muscle tissue not only with macronutrients, but also with oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that you have a finite amount of air on your back, that our bosses expect a high workload with that ticking time bomb on your back. And if you have to feed, you know, 190 pounds of lean mass air, you're not going to make it very far. So I've again had to change the way that I program, especially accessory work for
Mm-hmm.
firefighters, because yeah, I can get them jacked and it works real well and they're super stoked about it. But as it turns out, those guys blow through their air bottles in way too fast. So now it looks like some of that accessory work is less than 5 reps for heavy loads
Hmm.
to have strength, but not necessarily size.
It is a wicked problem. I mean, it is a
It's
very
all that stuff that,
complicated. Yeah.
here's the tough part. You're a smart dude. You know all the stuff that I know. And the trick is implementing things as a whole,
Yeah.
as a whole program,
Yeah.
taking everything into consideration and presenting it in something that people have to buy into without all the knowledge.
Yes. It
And
is.
not a
It's the genius of it is to say, hey, there's all this information, but I'm just going to present enough where you'll do it.
Yep. Yep. And they don't need to hear it. I've heard it so many times where it's like, if you have to give this long, drawn out explanation of why this program works, my question is, do you actually understand the purpose of it?
Yeah.
And in reality, it should be something as simple as, why we run? Because you have to support your body weight, which means that all that muscle tissue, you've got to feed it air. Okay. Your body will naturally find a homeostasis if you run once to twice per week.
Yeah.
It'll do it. And then the same could be said for like hypertrophy or back squatting for strength, all those things. Yeah, they have a time and a place, but what's the goal? What's the goal?
Yeah, anecdotally, it's funny how that for 20 years of my life, it was like, hey, how can I really prioritize muscle? And now it's like, man, how could I lose weight to do all the things that they're telling me I'm a liability because I'm too heavy for?
Dude, I couldn't agree more, man. And here's what I learned doing some of the stuff that I know you're into is that, you go ride the Leadville 100. And as you're training for that, what does your body do? It finds homeostasis for the demands. If you want to ride 100 miles on a mountain bike, you're going to expect that your body is going to lose muscle mass doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got to just observe Rich achieve a sub 9 hour LT 100 mountain bike. And it was absolutely mind numbing. And the cool part was, and he'll say that he didn't lose any weight, but he looked a lot leaner. He looked a lot smaller on his upper frame.
Uh-huh.
And he's a perfect example. Like, even guys that are strength training on a daily basis, when you impose additional demands on your frame, it will adapt.
Yeah. Yeah, those causal loops and how multiple loops are connecting together is something that, I mean, I just think is like the coolest thing to figure out, and also to recognize like, hey, it's a moving target and it's different for everybody, and it probably, it continues to change and adapt. But I just can't think of. I think recently I've become obsessed with that because I know with my ADD, I won't ever be to a point where I feel like I can move on. Like this will be something that captivates my attention forever, what you're talking about, and just, the fact that it continues to change. Man, I don't want to keep you for too long, but I am interested in where you find inspiration. You're somebody I've always looked to is like, man, Matt's always got something cool like in the works, like, something he wants to go and test, or an adventure to have, or like you said, just total recreation. Where do you find, like, who's your guru, man?
Well, there's so many because of like what we're interested in, like, I look to certain people for strength work. I look to certain people for hypertrophy work. I look to certain people for running work, and the same is true for adventure. Until you really explore what's out there, it's hard to know what you're into or what challenges can be had. And there's a few that I do look at regularly for inspiration and for ideas. And one of them is the guys from Beat Monday.
Monday.
They do. Yeah, it's super cool. I first saw Beat Monday because I was researching a adventure, an unofficial mountain triathlon called the Jackson Hole Picnic, and
oh yeah,
I jumped on YouTube and I watched a video that was produced by Outside TV that's called Beat Monday. And I forget I think it's Mike something and Jason Anton, who's a Boulder guy. And when you see this guy, you're like, oh, he's a big jack dude. Like, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And I watched them do their version of the picnic, and that's the first place I saw them. And I got hooked watching this concept that they have of like, what can they do in 48 hours on a weekend that's big, audacious, and maybe they won't succeed. And I kind of got tied into that. My second kind of go-to, which is Spencer, when you see these guys, you and I, like your immediate reaction is going to be, okay, now how do I do that when I weigh as much as I do? Uh, there's two or three guys that kind of make up this group called Mediocre Amateur, and they got a YouTube channel that it's just unadulterated fun for them, and they are ballsy, but they really are. They're amateurs. They're not professional athletes. They go out. One of the guys, I think this is the way it works for them. They have one of their group that is a pilot, so they can fly all over the world as a group and jump into these huge adventures, and they record it. The three of them or four of them, and they talk about their experience. And one of the ones that I saw them do most recently was a long 104-mile mountain run in the Dolomites. So mark your calendar, Spencer, Kelly Nix, next year. Cherie's turning 50, and she's got her eyes
on that
on a Dolomite running trip.
Wow.
And the running, let's just put running in air quotes, please, because
yes,
it's mostly hiking.
Yeah.
But when it's flat, we'll jog. And so basically you start in the Dolomites, in like a ski area, and you go up a trail to the mountains, and then you do what's called a via ferrata. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes. It's where it's like it's fixed anchors on the mountains, right?
Correct. Yeah, and it's different than like what American rock climbers are used to seeing, where it's just a bolt where you have to bring your own rope. This is like you've got a 1/2-inch cable installed into the rock, and all you need is 2 tethers to basically go up this system.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful way of seeing the mountains with very low risk. And you can wear your tennis shoes or your running shoes as you're doing it, but you're climbing semi-technical stuff. And basically, once you're at the top of this mountain, you go down the other side of it and you move on to the next one. And every time, you're about at your day's limit, well, guess what? The Italians and the Europeans are phenomenal at putting perfectly placed mountain huts there to serve you salami, sliced meats, cheese, and wine.
A little
For the
espresso.
night
Man.
Yeah, while you kind of chill out and then get ready for the next one. So yeah, those are the two of the big YouTube channels that I like to get some ideas from. And then, the last thing is just really just talking with friends and seeing what we're capable of. Right now I got a little hit list with Rich going back and forth on text that he and I are talking about doing the Tahoe Rim Trail.
Oh,
in
yeah.
In a single push, which is just over 200 miles on a mountain bike, in a big circle around Lake Tahoe through some of the most beautiful national forests out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
Spencer,
sounds...
I want to do all the things with all the people, including you and your lovely wife, because
likewise, dude, man.
I'm 45. I don't got that much time left, and I want to together.
I only have 2,000 weeks left. I did some arithmetic, so I gotta get cooking.
Man, it's that stuff though, and I think the element of a little bit of suffering is what really solidifies it in my brain as being a truly memorable experience. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be type 2 fun, but you know, maybe that type 1.5 fun is the right prescription.
You're right, man. We could have a whole conversation about that of just how there needs to be a potential, like you said earlier. Hey, this may not go as well as I would like, and I think that's another way to correlate with suffering. You know, if there's going to be something that's hard enough, then there's a chance that it may not go that great. And yeah, how is it an adventure if none of that's there or it's super easy? I think it can be satisfying and it can be like awe-inspiring, but it doesn't quite have like the juice that makes you want to remember or like talk about it later.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like CrossFit talking about expanding the margins of your experience. You know, that circle that you draw around your experience level is, to me, we're tapping into parts of our brain and our body chemistry that we've never touched on before. And something happens when you push outside of that margin of your experience into something new, that you're rewarded with a flood of chemicals in your brain and in your body that make you feel so wonderful. And you know, that's why drugs are so effective. people people love them drugs because it taps into parts of their brains that are just, you know, unused or you didn't even know were there.
Man, you're totally right. There's that, and then I've found, at least lately, that I really like the anticipation and the excitement leading up to that. Like I feel like and maybe everybody's like that, but for me, it feels like um, there's a huge enjoyment out of planning and, just like we're saying, like, you know, researching. And I mean, I think that's honestly why I like gear so much, because I get the gear before I do the thing, and it's a way to like celebrate what's happening and, like, you know, get
Yes.
really excited about what's about to go down. Is it like that for you? I mean,
Yeah,
imagine it's got to be.
I've gotten into the next. I feel like a next step of that, which is doing it with less gear. Um, so
Hmm.
like, so I really love rock climbing. I really do. I think it's one of those tasks and one of those sports that you're challenging yourself by getting a little scared, by doing something you thought is improbable. But the concept of scrambling, or if you will, rambling, where you run to a rock that's class 4, maybe easy class 5. You don't change it out of your shoes. You don't have a backpack. You don't have chalk on your butt, and you just run up the rock. Um, and then once you're at the top, you hike back down and you go about your day. There's something about uh, that simplicity of human
Hmm.
movement on on a landscape, which is so incredible. But you can't do that with skiing, right? You can't do that with mountain biking. So there are those elements. To me, like what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because something like bike packing really appeals to me, and you have to have a mountain of gear to do it.
Yeah. But
So there
you
is
bring up
pleasure into it.
a good point, because I've thought, and there's a great book. Do you know Alex Racy? Have y'all ever connected?
No, no, I haven't.
He lives in Fort Collins. He was in the Army for a long time. He recommended a book called Strength After Strength, and it's about, hey, once you've been successful, like what are the next things that you prioritize? And one of the things I want to make you think that I came up with this, but it's from the book, is that how do you have the same amount of fun with less attachment? And
Yeah.
it's like, hey, how do you get back into fire without the ego? Hey, how do you pursue adventures with like out the all the gear? And I think that's like a really beautiful sentiment. It's like a really cool way to tie back together what it means to get a little older. It's not that you're any less ambitious, but it's just the way that you're going to go about it naturally is going to look different than it would, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And the big thing with that too is the sharing with your friends.
Yes.
You don't have to scare them. You don't have to uh, do something the first time that's so audacious that they never want to do it again. It's like the academy, right? Um, but making something as accessible as possible, but that is the right dosage for that person, that when you get to share it, you feel fulfillment and they get to experience it by expanding the margins of their experience. Then all of a sudden there's this chemistry of the group that, there's hugs at the car when you get back to the
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
There's pictures being shared, and there's all the love and connection that, geez, man, I wish I knew about this stuff when I was like, 30, 35 years old, because, now that I get to experience that with my friends that I've been around for a long period of time, the smallest little dosage of some of these experiences with them, and we share that for the rest of our lives, and we get to always like connect with a big hug because we have that connection now. And man, I tell you what, if you're a 25-year-old person and you're not into this, get into it, because that right there is how you make memories last a lifetime, and you really find out who gels well with your personality, your attitude, and your drive.
Man, I couldn't have said that any better. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm thankful for you. I love you and your wife. I'm so grateful for the friendship that we have, and the fact that I get to have some of these experiences and adventures with you. So man, why don't we just end it right there?
Yeah, let's do that. But I do want to say, back at you, man. I'd like, Spencer, I can't wait to spend this winter together and hit Janet's cabin with the fam and
Yes.
all the stuff.
Yes. Question for you. I've been thinking about the picnic a lot because we were in Jackson for the first time this summer. The scramble part, the Grand Tetons. How do I need to prepare for that? Because the other things, it's like, well, it's pretty straightforward. But for that, do I need to be pretty familiar with the Grand before I would attempt something like that?
I would say it would help. It would be helpful to have knowledge of it prior to going up there. Whether that's you do it with a person that has done it before,
Mm-hmm.
or whether you go with a guide earlier in the week, which is probably not a great idea because it is a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, Spencer, you want to do the the picnic? I'm in, because it was. Here's the thing about the picnic: the minute you get sick of doing whatever activity it is that you're doing, you switch
Uh-huh.
to another one.
That's amazing. I mean, I've done a lot of reading and research on it, but how long? Like, what's the time frame to shoot for? Like
I
15
did
plus
17
hours,
hours.
17 hours.
Yep. Or what? 17? 19. It was 19 hours. And I just went at a leisurely pace. I swam. We rode our bikes at a fast clip. We swam at a leisurely pace. We ran the flats at a leisurely pace, and then we hiked at a leisurely pace. Um, the thing that I wasn't prepared for was that my partner, we may have been moving at a pace that was too much. And
Yeah.
he's just one of those guys where he's such a positive guy.
Uh-huh.
He's like a
Yeah.
child. He's like a child where it's like he decompensated very quickly. So once we realized that it was already too late. So he had only we climbed to the top of the Grand and then made it back down to Lupine Meadows Trailhead, and he
Yeah.
had to pop out there, and
Uh-huh.
I had to finish the rest on my own, which was kind of an adventure on its own, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say the swim. Get ready for the swim.
Yeah.
Everything else is manageable.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the part that makes me the most nervous, which is exciting because it's like I haven't swam in a while or trained for something that has a swim. So, yeah, man,
Yeah.
I'll give it some
Yep.
thought. And last thing, have you been to Bentonville, Arkansas?
No, let's go. Want
Holy
to.
shit. I went there last weekend and it's overwhelmingly cool. The whole town is set up to ride mountain bikes.
Yeah,
Uh,
am I right? Is this the Waltons or
Yeah, as this, I
they're
mean, you
funding
may,
the whole push?
yeah, you probably know this story, but there's some stipulation to the family trust where the offspring have to stay within Bentonville, and so one of the sons was like, "All right, I'll I'll call your bluff, and I'll just invest all of my money into like." There's stuff there that doesn't make any sense financially. Like there's a coffee shop on the bike trail that you can only access on two wheels. There's, I mean,
That's
it's nuts.
insane.
It's nuts, and there's so many. I'm doing a 100K bike race there next month, and so I went on a little stealth mission just to camp and like ride my bike a bunch. But I mean, as soon as I left, I thought of you. I thought of like everybody that I know that likes riding bikes. It's like, why are we not like here, like meeting up to do something that would be really fun? Anyways,
I'm in. Count me
it's
in.
awesome.
Yep.
When do you feel like you're back in action with the knee where you can do stuff like that? Is it? I mean, are you back
I'm
already?
literally, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I actually even had a setback this last weekend. My PT, my physical therapist, said that it was okay to add in backward sled drags,
Yeah.
and within like 5 minutes of dragging a sled, my knee got super irritated, and I kind of hobbled home.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of a setback, but I think I've got my fingers crossed for starting my ski season at the end of December,
Cool.
and hopefully at that time start running and stuff like that too. So be ready for next year.
Cool. Well, as far as ski season goes, you won't miss out on hardly anything.
No, no, and honestly, you know this now. Like, yeah, the middle of the winter is great for like powder skiing at resorts, but like in the backcountry, it's pretty tough to get back there safely and ski the cool objectives that you want to ski. So most of the great skiing in the backcountry happens, March or later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Doing just fine.
So yeah, plenty of time. Yep.
Well, dude, thanks so much for doing this. Tell Cherie that I'd love to do one, all three of us, or man, I'd even love just to do one with her if she's up for it. But yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah. Dude, you're great. I love watching these, and you're so good at the interviewing, and obviously, like the whole rebranding is just outstanding. So yeah, but keep up the good work with the rebranding, because like
Thank you, man.
I love BPR. I love everything you guys are doing. So keep it up.
Thanks. Likewise, man.
Fight
Proud
the
of
good
you.
fight.
Will do. All right, man. Well,
Okay, hi to Kelly.
will do. Say hi to Cherie. I'll talk to you soon.